There's 3 pieces of advice on early recovery that I'm calling absolute bullshit on. Heaps of good advice swinging around early recovery, and some of it makes sense to a lot of people. But there is a few things swinging around that just don't quite hit the mark and don't quite make sense. And everybody seems to agree with them, but I'm calling bullshit on them. So let's not waste any time. Let's jump right in. First piece of bullshit advice. Don't get into a relationship in the first 12 months of your recovery. This is totally nuts to me and has never made sense. Now, I will admit that there is people that shouldn't get together because they've got some underlying issues going on. And when you bring them together, it's just, it's just cause for a toxic relationship. But I've seen so many examples of people getting together in their early recovery and using that as like a binding force that connects them in a deeper and greater way and helps them in their recovery journey. And they are still successful to this day in their relationship, 5, 10, 12 plus years on. I think it's ridiculous because recovery is about human to human connection. And when humans connect with other humans, that's when the real healing happens. That's where the real medicine is. And recovery actually happens in relationships. It's those moments where people piss you off and press on your little buttons and push you in little directions that annoy you and whatever. And it's about how you learn how to react and respond and adapt to those situations. So if you're not in a relationship or you're not in relationships where that is happening, then, you don't actually get that opportunity to grow and heal and transform in your process. Now, I'm not saying that everybody needs to go out and get into a relationship in their first 12 months and they shouldn't use it as something to heal themselves, because some people can make other people, like there's an old saying that some people can make other people their higher power, and you definitely don't want to do that. But it is absolute bullshit that you can't get into a relationship in the first 12 months and be successful and have a successful relationship and for it to actually benefit your recovery. Now, I'm going to get a lot of hate on that one. Drop it in the comments. I'm going to love to respond to that. Second piece of advice that I'm calling bullshit on is that you have to do your recovery for yourself. This is the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard in my life. Nobody that I've ever worked with comes and says to me, well, there's been a couple of people, I lie, there's been a couple of people, but the majority of people never come to me and say, I want to do this because I want to change my life. They usually come to me and say, I want help because I've destroyed the relationship with my wife or my husband. I want to do this because I've destroyed the relationship with my kids. My business is failing. There's all these external reasons that are impacting their recovery. So to say that you have to want to do it for yourself is just ridiculous, right? And I learned this for myself in my journey. So I've told this story on the last podcast, but I'll tell it again. One of the things that I felt so bad about in my journey was that I used to steal money, and then I would give like my brother, who was 8 years old, $100. And at 8 years old, $100 to him was like $1 million. He loved it, right? Then I would go and spend all the rest of my other money on drugs and alcohol, run out, jump back in the house, steal it out of his piggy box, and he would just be devastated. And I'd do things like that to him over and over again. I think I hocked his Nintendo Wii, stuff like that, right? And it just created sadness within him, and I felt incredibly regretful for that. And I still feel a bit emotional talking about it to this day because it hurts. It tugs on the heartstrings. But what I did and what I realized was that I actually didn't really care about myself when I was going through that early recovery stage. I kind of had the fuck it. So I was just like, this is my lot in life. This is too hard. I don't want to do this. And a lot of people explain this phenomenon. They just feel like everything's too hard and they don't want to do it for themselves. And for me, tapping into that regret and that shame that I had around the things that I did for my brother really spurred me on to say, you know what, I'm going to do this for my family. And in particular, I'm going to do this for my brother. So what I did in the rehab that I hated for the whole time, but what I did was I printed off a photo of my brother and I stuck it to the front of my rehab folder. And I'd get up every morning and look at that photo, and it was encouragement for me to say, hey, I'm going to do this for my brother no matter how I'm feeling. And it got me through some really tough moments, through some really tough cravings, and it spurred me on. So this is something in our connection-based living program that we run. And if you're interested, we'll leave descriptions down below to book a call, to have a free consultation and a chat to see if we can help you in your journey. But this is something that we do in our program, which is what we call a why statement, where we gear all the reasons for why people want to change. And it's usually external validating factors that help people to really push them through those hard times that you have in early recovery and those hard cravings that you need to overcome. So that's the second thing that I want to call bullshit on, that you have to want to do it for yourself. You see all these Americans on TV, you have to want to do this for yourself or else you're never going to change. That's bullshit. That is bullshit. That might come further down the line when you get through the initial phase of recovery and things change and your self-esteem grows and all that kind of stuff. But at the start, you feel like a piece of shit and you don't want to do anything for yourself. You're escaping yourself through drugs and alcohol because you hate yourself. So you have to tap into things that you care about outside of yourself to drag yourself over the line. So that's number two, and that's a real big one, and it pisses me off to no end. So if you're listening to this and you feel like you don't want to do it for yourself, think about the things that you do want to do it for, whether it's the people you love, the career that you love, the relationships that you have, or anything else in your life that's important to you. Use that as motivation to, push you over the line and get recovery. Number three, this is a controversial one. Probably get a lot of comments about this as well, but there's a common thing that you have to cut all your bad friends, all your past associations to get recovery. And for a lot of people, that just isn't feasible. For a lot of people, yes, there may be bad influences there, but people have grown up with people all their lives and they can't just cut them. It would be a shit bloke thing to do. So, it's more about the boundaries that you're willing to put into place with people. And I love that saying that people that mind don't matter and people that don't mind matter, right? I think I haven't butchered that, because what I've found with my mates when I went through this whole process of recovery was when I got in contact with them and I told them what I was doing, even though they were in a bad place, and I said to them, hey, I love you, buddy, but I'm trying to do this. We may not talk as much in the next little bit, but we're still, brothers. We're still tight friends. We're still going to catch up, and we just got to do that in different ways. Instead of going to the pub, maybe let's grab a coffee, but I might need some time just to get myself together because things trigger me and all that kind of stuff. And you have a frank conversation with them and you explain your process and all that kind of stuff. What I find is that most of your good friends, the people that don't mind, they're the ones that matter. They will support you. They will say, fucking awesome, brother. Go and do your thing. We're here to support you. We love you. Anything we can do to help, just let us know. We're not going to deal to you again. We're not going to buy you alcohol again, all this kind of stuff. So that's been my experience with helping people in treatment. The one thing that I would say that you probably have to do is you probably have to try and cut off your drug dealers. Sometimes that can be tricky because they can be intertwined as friends as well, and you might have to have a similar conversation with them. But if you can, drug dealers are the exception that you have to cut out to really kind of put that space in between you and the next drug. But this notion that you have to wipe out the rest of your life and not be in contact with friends that you would have made over years and years of friendship, over years and years of getting to know people and years of friendship and different experiences, is just ludicrous. What I'm really detailing here with these three bullshit pieces of advice that, people get given every day to get sober is that it's just archaic And what it is an isolationist way of going about recovery. Anybody can recover if you shut yourself off from the rest of the world. And that's not what recovery is about. To me, recovery is about reintegration and how you integrate your new life back into your old life and back into new settings in your life and back into your life in general, right? It's about the reintegration process, not the isolation process. I always say, you know, like that show, The Biggest Loser, people that were severely overweight could go away to the Biggest Loser camp and easily lose weight with all the support and the intensity and all that kind of stuff. But the facts showed that as soon as they got back in their normal environment, old habits slipped back in and they put the weight back on because they hadn't worked on reintegration. They'd only gone through a stage of isolation and in change. And it's just an old model and an old way of thinking about it. And it's really, if I'm being honest, it's really the old 12-step model way of doing things. So nothing against 12 steps. If meetings help you, that's great. I encourage people to go to meetings. They can be a really good resource and asset. But just not all the advice that you get from people is always helpful. And it's always good to just like double check the advice that you're being given and think things through and make decisions based on what your common sense says and talk to therapists and coaches and other people outside of the space that can give you a new perspective and a new idea. So they are the 3 pieces of bullshit advice that I hear people getting every day sober that holds people back. And if you actually go in the other direction, you get better results. All right. So I hope you enjoyed that little coaching session. We're going to do these little coaching sessions as podcasts and YouTube videos in between guests for the week. Pretty much every single day, I'm going to come up with a new topic. So get ready for me to vibe in your ears. If there's anything in particular that you want me to talk about, please send them in via email. The email is jack@realdrugtalk.com.au. I'll put that in the show description. So if you have any particular topics that you want me to talk about, please send them through. As always, our shows are brought to you by Connection-Based Living, where we teach people how to get recovery without having to go to rehab, without having to check out of their life for 30, 60, 90 days, and without having to give up forever if you don't want to. I know it sounds too good to be true, but it is possible, and we've helped hundreds of people to do it and reintegrate into their life in a normal and healthy way. So that's Connection-Based Living. You can book a free consultation. You can have a chat with me. We can talk through your situation, see if you're eligible for the program. You might not be. If you're not, we can refer you on into a different direction and get you some help going. But I hope everybody's staying safe out there, and I look forward to vibing in your ears again soon tomorrow. I hope that was helpful. Peace.